What's up everybody and welcome to a new video. And in this video we're going to go over my notes for raw strings and f strings in Python. So let's start with the raw strings. Namely, the notation here is that you simply put an R in front of the quotation marks. So for example, if I say here print and then quotation marks hello world, then we've created here a regular string. And now if I simply put an R in front of that, then we've created a raw string. And the characteristic of that is that escape characters or sequences are ignored. And if you don't know what escape characters or sequences are, then you can check out the previous video where we have discussed them. But now I just want to quickly show here an example for that. Namely, therefore, let's here delete this R again and then put in here an escape sequence, namely the new line character \n. And now if I print this out, then you can see that world here is printed on the next line. However, if I now simply put an R in front of that, then you can see that this escape character or this new line character here is ignored and it's simply printed out here. So that is the characteristic of raw strings and how you could use them. And here an example use case would be when you need many backslashes, for example, for file paths on Windows. And to show that, I've prepared here this string. So here we have the string desktop backslash new folder backslash file.txt. And now if I print this out, then you can see that we get here this weird looking string because this \n here is interpreted as a new line character. And as we've seen in the previous video, one way to get around that is to use escape characters. Namely, we could use the escape character for the backslash. So therefore, we simply put here a backslash in front of those backslashes. And then if I print this out, then we get here our regular file path. But another way of doing that is to use raw strings. So therefore, let's again copy the cell, and here you can simply then put an R in front of that, and then you also get here this regular file path because this \n is not interpreted as an escape character. Okay, so with that now, we've already covered all my notes for raw strings. So now let's go over my notes for f strings. Namely here, the notation is that you put an F in front of the quotation marks, and the F, by the way, stands for formatted. So these are formatted strings. And then they also contain placeholders, which are here these curly braces, and you can use them to insert different values into the same string template. And now to show the usefulness of f strings, I first, however, want to show an approach without using f strings. So therefore, I've prepared here this code example. So here we have three variables. The first one is string start, which says there are, then string end, which says products in the shopping cart, and then end products, which is 4. So now let's say that we want to create a string that says there are 4 products in the shopping cart. The way that we could do that without using f strings is by simply concatenating these strings here together. So we can then say string start plus our end products here. But because this is an integer, we first have to transform that into a string. So we can then say string and then end products. And then lastly, we also add our string end to that. And then if I print this out, then we get here the string. There are 4 products in the shopping cart. And then what we also could do is increase our end products here by simply saying plus 1. And now if I run this, then we get here the string that says there are 5 products in the shopping cart. And this can be done a little bit easier by using f strings. So let's create one. So let's say here f and then quotation marks. And then let's say here there are, and then we put in the placeholder. So these braces, and then products in the shopping cart. And then here in this placeholder, we simply put our variable and products. So then if I now run this, then we get here again the string. There are 4 products in the shopping cart. And again, we can also here use expressions. So we can simply say end products plus 1. And then we again get the string. There are 5 products in the shopping cart. So this is the notation for f strings and how they can be used. So then the next note is about format specifications. Namely, you can specify how exactly the inserted value should be formatted. So for example, how this end products here should be formatted. And the notation is that you put a colon after the value. And then the order of the specifications is first fill, then align, sign, width, grouping, precision, and type. So now let's look at an example of that. So therefore I've prepared here this code snippet. So here we have a variable called number, which is 999.99. And then here we have an f string where we put this number into a placeholder. So now if I run this, then we simply get our 999.99. So now let's use the format specifications to change how this string here looks. So therefore, let's simply insert here a colon. And then here I have prepared an example where I use all of the specifications. So now then if I run this, then you can see that our string now looks like this. So now let's go through each of these specifications to see what they do. So the first one is fill. So this simply specifies a fill character. And this is this dot here at the beginning. So here in our string, as you can see, before and after the value, there are these dots. So now if I make this, for example, a dash, then we get a dash. If I make this a 0, then we get a 0. And if I make this an A, then we get here an A. So you can really use any character that you want. So let's make it again a dot. So that's fill. Next we have align, which specifies where our value should be aligned. So here currently we have this uptick, which aligns the value to the center of the string. And if I now make this here a smaller than sign, then it's aligned to the left. If I make it a bigger than sign, then it's aligned to the right. And if I make it an equal sign, then we get the following here, where our number is aligned to the right and the sign here is aligned to the left. So here let's again use this uptick. So now if I run this again, then we get then the values again aligned to the center. So that's align. Next we have the sign. So this specifies the sign of the value. So there, to show that, I've prepared here a slightly modified example. So here we have number and then minus number. And then currently the sign is set to plus. So now if I run this, then you can see that we get a plus for positive numbers and then a minus for negative numbers. And if I now make this here a minus, then you can see that we only have the sign for negative numbers and no sign for positive. And what you also can do is use a space. In that case, then we have a minus sign for negative numbers and then a space for positive numbers. So that is the sign specification. Next, we have the width, which simply specifies the width of the string. So here we have set it to 12. So that's why we have here 12 characters. And now if I set it, for example, to 22, then we have here a string with 22 characters. And if I set it to 2, then it doesn't affect our string because our value here has more than 2 characters. So let's set it back to 12. So that's the width specification. Next we have grouping, and this is this comma here. And what that does is it groups our value into thousands. So since we have here this comma, we have here this comma. And now if I delete it, for example, then we don't have here this grouping. And here what you also can do or use is an underscore. Then we get here an underscore, and however, now let's set it back to the comma. So that's the grouping. Next we have precision, which specifies the precision of our value. And this is what this dot 0 here is for, which means that there are 0 numbers after the decimal point here in our value. So for example, if I set it to 1, then we have here now 1 value. If I set it to 2, then we get 2. If I set it to 3, then we get here 3 numbers after the decimal point. So let's set it back to 0. And here, just as a side note, you can also use that for strings. So for example, here I have a variable called country, which is Germany, and the position is set to 0. So now if I run this, then we get an empty string. If I set it to 1, then we get a G. And if I set it, for example, to 3, then we get here the first 3 letters. So then the last specification is the type. So this specifies the type of our number. So currently we use here f, which means that we have a float. We can also use here an e. Then we get here scientific notation, not notification. And then lastly, we get what you also can do is use a percent sign, and then we get here a percentage. Okay, so these are all the available specifications and how you can use them. And now lastly, let's go over the side notes here. And the first one states that you don't have to use all the specifications at once. So to show that, I've prepared here again another example. So here we have the variable called number, which is this time 123.567. And then here we use it in our f string. So now let's say that we only wanted to use here this fill specification. So for example, let's say we want to fill with zeros. If I now run this, then you can see nothing happens. And that's because for the fill specification, we actually also have to specify the width. Otherwise, there's nothing to fill. So for example, let's set it here to 10 so that we have 10 characters. And then you can see here that our string is filled here with these 2 zeros. Then next we have the align specification. So for example, let's say we want to align our value to the center by using this uptick. Then here again, if we just use this align specification, then nothing happens. And that's because we again have to use the width. So here, let's again set it to 10. And now our value here is aligned to the center. Then next here, we have the sign. So here we could use, for example, the plus, so that we then get here a plus in front of our value. Next, then the width, we can also just use the width alone. So for example, if I set it to 10, then we get here 10 characters in our string. And then next we have a grouping. So here we could, for example, use the underscore, so that we then have here our grouping in of the thousands in our value here. Next, then precision. So here we could say, for example, .5. This way then we get here this value where we have 123.6 or 0.6, which means, and that's because if you don't use here an f after this precision specification, then that means that in total our value should have 5 digits. And here it doesn't matter if they are in front of the decimal point or after. And then lastly, here we have the type. So for example, if you just want to use that, you could use, for example, just here the percentage, and then here you get a percentage. Okay, so that's the first side note. Then the second one is that if you use several of the specifications, then they have to follow the given order. So to show that here, let's use again, for example, the align specification and then the width. So now if I run this, then our string looks like this, and you have to use it in that way or in this order here. So you have to first specify the align and then the width, because if you do it the other way around, so if I, for example, here put this uptick after the 10, then here we get then an error. And just to show another example, let's set the precision, for example, to 2, and then let's use also the type specification by specifying an f. Now if I run it, we have here this value where there are two numbers after the decimal point. And again, you first here have to specify the precision and only then the type, because if you do it the other way around, so if I put the f in front of the precision, then we again get here this error. And with that now, we've already covered the side notes. And with that now, we have covered all the notes I wanted to cover with respect to raw strings and f strings. So then in the next video, we're going to go over my notes for booleans and then also the none value. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.